Hi. Our story begins 27 years ago when the librarians of the Ukrainian National Library found dozens of unlabeled boxes. Oh, let's see. Hold on. Down. Okay, it works better. When the librarians of the Ukrainian National Library found dozens of unnamed boxes in a dark corner of their library. The documents in these boxes looked something like what you see on your screen. It turned out that this was long presumed lost archive left behind by an ethnographer, Moisei Beregovsky, and his colleague, linguist Revim Lerner, who spent the entire World War II collecting and recording Yiddish music, stories, and anecdotes from Jews who lived and were dying in the Soviet Union during this time. Of 6 million Jews murdered during the Holocaust, 5 million were speakers of Yiddish, a 1,000-year-old Jewish language. 2.5 million of them were murdered within the Soviet borders of 1941, and of them about 900,000 in Ukraine. When the archive was discovered, it turned out that more often than you think, the last thing they did before they died was to write a song or a poem about what was going on with them. Most of these songs were created by women, some by children, and almost none of the texts have been known prior to this discovery. None of them survived in popular memory either. None of the texts also looked like any of the songs that survived from other ghettos, like Ghetto of Warsaw, Ghetto of Krakow, or Ghetto of Vilna, and other places where Jews were dying or where they were incarcerated during World War II. Beregovsky and Lerner planned to publish a book with these songs a little bit later, and the book already went for one round of Stalin's censorship. You see this beautiful, sexy cover on the screen, so it was ready for publication. But it never saw the light of day because Beregovsky and Lerner were arrested by Stalin's government for conducting this project. And when they were arrested, they were told that the archive was confiscated and they were told that it was destroyed forever. They died thinking that this was the case. So our presentation tells stories of these songs, their authors, and scientists who risked their lives to preserve these voices of people who lived for the darkest chapter of modern Jewish history. We will start with a song called Karlovka. It was created by a 19-year-old woman named Fira Mitzel, who was a prisoner in a labor camp located in Karlovka, a small village in Mykolaiv region of Ukraine. That labor camp was located on premises of a pig breeding factory, and for some time prisoners lived there together with pigs. Of 5,000 people who were prisoners of that labor camp, only about 480 survived the war. Now, Karlovka is quite a difficult place to research. In fact, it's very hard to find information about that labor camp, even in many Holocaust encyclopedias where it doesn't get a specific entry. Sadly, violence against Jews during World War II was so widespread that Karlovka does not get its full story. But for Fira Mitzel, this was the place which was the embodiment of everything that was wrong with the humanity. And she definitely did not want it to be forgotten. So please welcome Alice Zawadzki and Bruno Heinen, who will perform the Polish premiere of Karlovka.
Sekund mlajesz a w ten gorodok zu gehen. Oi, dämmelt sollt ihr sich hitten, ihr sollt nicht happen in die Zehn. Alle Jiden sollen zu der Arbeit gehen, kein einem soll men do nicht sehen. Dämmelt sogen mir zu sich allein, oi, Karlovke. kommt der Polizei Stepan auf dem Gorodok zuvor. Oi, 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 dämmelt dieses Weh zu unsere junge Jorn. Dem a Klapp und dem a Stub und dem a Patsch und dem a Knub. Dämmelt sogen mir zu sich allein. Schöne kleine Dörfele, wo wir oben verbracht unsere Tag. Mit den Asylkelch, wo's mir pflegen laufen auf dem Weg. Oi, besser wollst du geworden, verbrennt, ehe der mir huben dich erkennt. Vergessen kann ich nicht, vergessen kann ich kein nicht in Karlovke.
One of the largest ghetto in that part of Ukraine, which was then called Transnistria between rivers Bug and Dniester, was Bershet Ghetto, a small town in Vinnytsia region of Ukraine. Before the war, 73% of its population were Jews. In September 1941, Romanian authorities deported about 15,000 Jews from northern Bessarabia and Bukovina to Bershet, and another few thousand Jews were deported there from other areas of Ukraine. Altogether, about 25,000 people were put into a small ghetto, which consisted of 337 houses. Roughly 75 people lived in each two-bedroom apartment there. By the end of winter, though, of 1941, of these people, only 3 or 4 per room remained. The rest died from cold, diseases, and impossibly hard labor conditions. The song you're about to hear next, it's called From a Sad Camp, from a Treueriken Lager in Yiddish. It was written by a survivor of Bershet Ghetto. His name is Itzik Semedubovsky. He was a 20-year-old man in 1945, and after he was liberated from that ghetto in 1944, he served in the Red Army. About 440,000 Jews served in the Red Army. That's how Soviet Army was called during this time. And a known number of them were drafted right after they survived ghettos like ghetto of Bershet. I don't know exactly when Semedubovsky wrote this song. Maybe he was still a prisoner in Bershet, or maybe, like other soldiers, he wrote it after he discovered the aftermath of violence against Jews in Ukraine when he served in the Red Army. Jews who went through that experience were the first ones to notice that their people have been gone from the land where they have lived for hundreds of years prior to this war. One such soldier, who later became a famous writer, Vasily Grossman, called that aftermath, "Ukraine is now empty of Jews." Please welcome back Alice Zawadzki and Bruno Heinen, again with the Polish premiere of In a Treueriken Lager.
Oi, so gdzie jidelech, oi, wo die Jeschule. Ich denk, ich wart auf ich wär verbrennt. Me sagt, sie ist gar a gut Refuele. Sie wird uns auslösen von Hitlers Hand. Sie wird uns öffnen die Augen jidelech. Sie wird erlangen uns das Glück aufs Neu. Oi, wieder lebt man schon die Show, die Gold wieder lädt man schon zu sein dabei. Lesate leben mir, oi, liebe Jidelik, und tun Transnistrie in schwere Neut. In Chaschkes blanken mir, arum wie schäppelig, von alle Winkelig, es trott der Teut. Von Bug bis Dnieperteich, in Städt und Städtelech, ist Budenroschim sicher jiddisch Blut. Auf Gforem Ernte, auf Gforem Blutige, ist aufgeschrieben der Jid kaputt. Oi, sagt je Jidelich, oi, wo die Schule, ich denk, ich wart auf ihr, ich war verbrennt. Me sagt, dass sie es gar a gut refuele, sie wird uns auslesen von Hitlers Hand. Me sagt, dass sie es gar a gut refuele, sie wird uns auslesen von Hitlers Hand. Me sagt, dass sie es gar a gut refuele, sie wird uns auslesen von Hitlers Hand.
One of the lesser-known parts of history of World War II and the Holocaust is that about 1.6 million Polish, Romanian, and Soviet Jews survived the war in the Soviet rear, in countries of Central Asia, behind the Ural Mountains, and parts of Siberia. Some of them were Polish Jews who were deported, sent to jail to these places sometime between 1939 and 1941, when parts of Eastern Poland were annexed by the Soviet government. These were religious, political, and business leaders. In Kazakhstan, for example, between June 1941 and the end of 1942, almost 400,000 evacuees and refugees found a temporary home. Our next song, called Kazakhstan, tells their story. It was collected from an anonymous singer by a person named Yakov Merzon. Yakov Merzon was a rabbi who worked in Kryvyi Rog in Ukraine and was arrested by Stalin's government long before the war started in 1937 for running an underground Jewish school. He spent 8 years in jail, got very sick there. He suffered from tuberculosis. He lost all his teeth. And in 1944, he was released on compassionate grounds. So he lived in Almaty, where he supported himself by begging on streets. And, refugees had a lot of kids, and those kids saw the beggar, were making fun of him. He looked very scary, no teeth and all that. And they were throwing dirt at him. And at some point, he lost his patience, and he started yelling at them in Hebrew. And when kids reported the incident to their parents went to see, well, who is this person who is yelling at kids in Hebrew in Almaty in 1944? And they discovered he was a teacher and a rabbi and hired him, to teach those kids a little manners maybe, but also to teach them how to read in Hebrew. As Merzon was doing this work, he wrote down songs that those kids were singing among each other. And he put all them into this notebook, the pages of which you see on your screen. Because he didn't know who was scarier, Hitler, that was killing his people in Europe, but was far from Kazakhstan, or Stalin, whose government put him to jail and was very close, he did not write a single name of a single child who sang those songs for him. Sometime after May 1945, Merzon mailed that notebook to Moisei Beregovsky in Kyiv because he heard Beregovsky was collecting these materials. And then very soon after that, he died. He was, after all, a very sick man. He didn't know what happened to that notebook. But because that notebook exists, it's the only source that we have until today of music that circulated among Jewish refugees in Almaty during World War II. So now you will hear, once again, the Polish premiere of the song Kazakhstan from Yakov Merzon notebook.
es hat der Sturmwind mir gebracht in Asien rein. Und ich weiß schon gut erzählt, sie ist du allein, Kasachstan. Sis azamin land, arum mit Berg, ei wie a Wand, Berg mit die Knätchen und mit Spitzen. Zugedeckt mit weißen Schnee. Was gewild der Berg von mir, oi von mir. Sie seid ihr euch mir geworden, oi Feind mir, ich hab sich schon gelitten an der Schier, von geboren und beseint, jetzt kommt zu dem Spruch noch ein Glied, bei uns bist du a Bruder, jeder Bruder ist Jid. Alle Tiere wurde Jakob, hat nur nicht sein Kimmeure. Burg sowjetische kennen und können Lenins teure. Von aller Menschen, aller Brüder, von ein Taten, von ein Mame, von aller Mischbuche, alle Glieder leben in mein Haus zusammen. Kasach und ein Ossetiner und ein Neuger und ein Gruziner, Ukrainer, Zigeuner, Russen, Kalmik, Tadschik, Polak, Belorussen. Ich hab sich schon gelitten und erschier, von geboren und bis heint. Jetzt kommst du dem Spruchel noch ein Glied. Bei uns bist der Bruder, jeder herauf, zu weinen und neu zu klagen. Und die merkt und mir sang, jetzt kommst du dem Spruchel noch ein Glied. Bei uns bist der Bruder, jeder la 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 ja.
In 1949, the Cabinet for Studies of Jewish Culture, where Moisei Berigovsky worked, was shut down. In 1950, Moisei Berigovsky was arrested and only released in 1956. He died in 1960, thinking that his work has been lost forever. Like biblical Moses, who never got to see the Promised Land, Berigovsky never got to see the songs being performed on stage, let alone making it all the way to the TEDxKazimierz. Today, we wanted to thank him for his heroic efforts that preserved voices of people living for the darkest chapter of modern Jewish history. Yes, it is 70 years after the archive was closed, but the songs did see the light of day. Above all, I want to thank you, our audience tonight, who chose to spend this afternoon here, listening to music of people who used songs to document their history for us. Thank you for making their dreams come true.